In the context of AI, we really like it this all feels so hackneyed. And I'm so bored of the creating of OpenAI's like overall web. It's just a big cat's cradle of power, which he's absolutely right to build. But the risk of this being a giant waste of resources is really massive, because we think that the answer to the really obvious problem of generalized AI, so the large models, is small models. Large models is that they're consistently wrong, especially where the public data is crap. And where is the public data crap? Data's crap in water.
Welcome to the Make Water Work podcast, where we dive into the people, ideas, and innovations shaping the future of water. I'm your host, Isaac Pellerin, and alongside my co-host, Megan Glover, the founder of 120 Water, we bring you insights from hundreds of incredible conversations we've had over the past 9 years with inspiring and energizing leaders in the water industry. Each week, we share those stories and conversations with entrepreneurs, community champions, and innovators who are making water work for everyone. Whether you're a water professional, a curious innovator, or simply passionate about our most precious resource, this podcast is for you. Let's get started. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the Make Water Work podcast. We are having so much fun doing this podcast, and today we have such an incredible guest. Megan, tell us who we have today.
Today, we have a very old friend, one of the first friends we probably met in water, the one, the only, the managing partner of Burt Island Ventures, Tom Ferguson. Welcome to the podcast, Tom.
It's a pleasure.
It's great to see you both. Thank you so much for having me on this. I've been following you since the beginning, so it's really awesome to be a part of it, especially very early.
Yes. And well, when we said we wanted to do a show kind of commingling predictions for 2026 and whatnot, we couldn't think of a better person to have on the podcast than you, Tom.
So it's cannot be at that time of year already. That is insulting.
I know.
God, how fast does everything go? That's crazy.
Water, not so much. But we like to start out the podcast with a question for all of our guests. So everyone has a story, and we'd love to know, Tom, your story of how water found you.
Yeah, it really did sort of pluck me out of my seat in a consultancy in London, just right opposite the Gherkin. I was really junior in this consultancy called ERM when they took on the pro bono piece of work to write the first water disclosure report for the Carbon Disclosure Project, which is a large transparency organization in the UK. And as a result of me being very cheap, I was given the thumb drive with the data and strategies of 150 of the global 300 around water. Because nobody understood anything really about water at all. I mean, everyone knew it was kind of out there, and sometimes it popped up in the sustainability conversations, but there were no real kind of water experts within the entire 2,800 person company, which I thought was weird. And anyway, as writing that report, I just saw that there was a huge gap between how important water obviously was and how important it was absolutely, incontrovertibly, and inevitably going to be, and how much people cared, which was not very much at all. And I thought in that gap was something really interesting. So everything went from the writing of that report.
Wow.
I would love to know in that, how was water defined? Because I feel like water is so ubiquitous, obviously. And so whenever there are conversations about water, it's utility water or process water, production. Like, what was the lens that you were looking at water through?
So it's 150 of the global 300. So you're really actually talking about basically ex-utilities other than the big utility operators, which was principally the power companies. I mean, I can't remember exactly whether or not there was a utility included there, but really what you were looking at was kind of process water for BP and Anglo American and Merck and Novo Nordisk and etc. Like, so it's all of the industrial side, from the access to the treatment. But everything terrestrial, obviously just the freshwater side of things, but it's all the stuff that we know and love, right? Which is the use of the molecule in industrial contexts, both on the inflow and the outflow.
Wow. Yep. Fascinating. And then from there, how long until you went to Imagine H2O, where we met?
So I wandered off to business school in 2012. and then had a fascinating summer working for an anaerobic digestion company in London. And then second year, and then we moved to San Francisco because I had kind of stars on my eyes of, well, isn't the romance of startups just amazing? And where can one go to go and learn this? But actually, the reason I really wanted to go, my amazing wife was, she was very accommodating. She'd already lived in San Francisco and slightly wanted to move to New York, but I sort of managed to, I don't know, hoodwink her or whatever. And we managed to get out there because I'd been really struck by almost the kind of the endless puzzle that it is to force something into existence against the corralled kind of, I mean, everything from, you know, poor decision making on the way in to choosing the wrong product or in response to the wrong value proposition, the forces of entropy, the difficulties of managing people, like forcing something into the world is weak. And I thought, like, it just, my first contact with it was in these sort of two early stages, one in the middle of business school and then one afterwards. And I was so struck by how difficult it is, even for really smart people, to force things into existence. And I thought that was a puzzle that I would love to go and spend a lot of time with. Anyway, the job came up at Imagine H2O, and Scott lost his mind and hired me in 2015. And then it kind of all snowballed from there. You know, that 5.5-year journey was totally instrumental in everything from the, you know, understanding how water startups work all the way to building the network that we need. Obviously the credibility in order to be able to definitely source and select and support companies, which is kind of, you know, obviously three of the four key jobs of a VC. So it was the perfect training ground.
No, absolutely. I've never heard entrepreneurship described that way, but I'm going to steal that. To force something into existence.
Thinking about on the way here is that, like, the natural state of the universe is literally to fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is, right? Is that we are all fighting against the forces of entropy. But what founders do, God bless their hearts, is say, that, but multiplied by 1,000, and desperately corralling resources, time, energy, intelligence in response to, obviously, possibly value creation, but more usually the deletion of a pain point in kind of market. And I think that there is something so intrinsically admirable that pursuit. Yeah, just like whenever I'm having kind of a bad day, if it's like, you know, fundraising or whatever it is, like just refocusing on the founders and being like, these are the people.
Yeah.
The why is to help these people go further towards their goal, remove pain from the pursuit of their goal, because intrinsically what they've chosen to do with their time is fundamentally really admirable.
Yeah.
It's a great substrate for a job. I feel incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
Well, let's unpack, you know, the job where you are today. So as managing partner and founding partner, right? You founded Burt Island Ventures, and I remember you telling me before you're like, I'm going to do this, Meg, I'm going to do this. And then, you know, congratulations to you because you are forcing this fund into existence. And it's a fund that must exist in water. And so, Tom, can you tell us a little bit about what's that leap been and that experience founding kind of the premier early stage VC fund in water?
Sure. Well, the way in which I sort of always thought about it, the reason I was encouraged on the way in, where I was reasonably confident that we were going to be able to get somewhere. I didn't think we were going to end up with a 30 million first fund, but better to be lucky than good to be fundraising in an epochally favorable environment in 2021 and literally doing our final close in February 22 when Russia invaded Ukraine in March 22. Like, that's crazy.
It's
lucky.
admirable.
Yeah.
I mean, that you were able to close that. Yeah.
It was an insane fundraising environment. There were so many reasons to say no to us, and we are insanely grateful to our 99 LPs in Fund One who decided that this was a good idea. But I think actually the guts of it were and remain really strong. You know, this is just an argument that is not easy, that is not difficult to make, and it's as if I'm pushing rocks uphill. I'm just stating fact, which is that this is a colossal market of, you know, $1.6 trillion a year, growing at least 8%. You know, maybe 10%. So if it's 10%, you're adding $160 billion worth of market just next year. And then, you know, as you compound and you go forward, this is a monstrous undertaking. And most of that spend is in sort of, you know, in my unguarded moments, I say legacy nonsense. And so the job of the entrepreneur is to lift up that spend and just put it in a new location. And that's the function of obviously all of the pursuit of entrepreneurship. But I also think it came from a good place in that I really did have radical founder market fit. You know, this is something that we look for in the founders that we back. And I definitely had it, right? There weren't many things hiding under rocks that we didn't know about, or I didn't know about.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly worked with a lot of ethically good entrepreneurs like yourself, Megan. We'd seen a lot go right, much more importantly, seen a lot go wrong. But we also knew about the reality of this massive and overlooked market. And we knew that it was overlooked. It wasn't because it was a dog, and it wasn't because it was just way too difficult. And it wasn't because water is some kind of intrinsic basket case. It was because we thought the people were looking at it wrong, and looking at it wrong from lots of different ways. And so as we built this argument, I've always liked fundraising, which is pretty weird for an LP. Sorry, for a GP. Every GP hates fundraising. I actually really like it because I see it as evangelism. Understands water. So if somebody spends half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour understanding water for a bit, even if they say no, great. Push the rock a millimeter up the hill. Let's go do that. But yeah, but putting it in business was, I mean, I was very fortunate for the timing of the fundraising environment, but I still remain very proud of the story. I still think it was and is a fund and platform that needs to exist at the seed stage. Like venture, like we all three of us know an absolute raft of unbelievably talented people come into this sector, and it was just crazy that it didn't already exist. So I figured, you know, when I say entrepreneurially honest, I think good things come from the, oh god damn it, okay, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just exasperation and just saying, well, I don't think I have a choice. Like that's how I felt. I think good things come downstream of that.
Yeah.
Along with ridiculous amount of good fortune, obviously.
Well, it's funny because when I think about one of the superpowers that you have, it is that quality of discernment. And I think that's what attracts the folks that are on your team, the Steve Kloos, the Christine Boyle, the folks that are on your team align with that level of discernment, that there's so many water startups and ideas, and what separates the ones that are going to go from an idea to a business.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very kind observation. One, though, you know, you can always question like Christine and Steve's discernment in their decision to come and work with me.
Sure.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I carry a healthy skepticism of my own.
It's a really kind of, I think it's a helpful kind of, I guess, like kind of analytical observation is that the reason that we fit together as a partnership is that to a large extent our theory of the startup, so our very, very, very long checklist that we look for, which we look for the kind of the intellectual architecture of the business that we think can make it within water, is largely, I mean, to a very sort of like a decent extent, derived from the insights and observations I've had from working with Christine since 2015 and working with Steve since 2015.
Yeah,
you know, they through key components of establishing the intellectual architecture for BIV. So when, you know, Christine, came available as a potential partner, she was obviously on the investment committee for exactly this reason.
Yeah.
You know, I jumped at the chance to say, hey, what do you think we kind of make this into a partnership? And then when Steve stuck his hand up at the end of 2023, both Christine and I mean, we had to really look at the growth fund to really understand whether or not this is a good idea, because going dual strategy that early could have been not a great idea because of the usual magpie syndrome and distraction and, you know, all these things. If you increase the denominator, if we increase the numerator, but we thought that Steve was a big enough increase of the denominator for us to be able to walk and chew gum. And so we think it has proved. But we think we have a pretty sophisticated idea of at least where the landmines are. Always be right, but we're very unlikely to be wrong for the wrong reasons. And that's a pretty strong way of doing it. But also, like, we're not going to get suckered into things in water that we think are structurally a relatively poor place to spend time. Our focus is on finding and helping the founders establish the best businesses. It's not about finding solutions in the most quote unquote obvious verticals within water. So having
Let's talk about that for a second, because when I look at the handful of investments that Burnt Island has made in the past 12, 18 months, it is,
eclectic.
if you are an outsider, you might be like, whoa,
what's the
what
strategy?
actually
Yeah,
is,
exactly. What's the
the
theme here?
common thread tying this together?
Yeah, it's a great point.
What is that
you
common thread?
noticed, did you, Isaac?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Desalination, flotion
To compliance,
compliance.
cyber, asset
Yeah.
management software.
going from utilities to industrial pre-treatment.
Oh,
like
and the
whole-
shower. The shower. And yeah.
it's direct to
Heat pump water
consumer.
heaters, we're just
Yes,
about to
the
announce
water
supply
heater.
chain software.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's incumbent upon us as we're thinking about the building of a portfolio, like one of the basics of portfolio construction is diversification, right?
Okay.
So we're a seed stage fund and we operate within water. But one of the brilliant things about water is that you can diversify across a whole bunch of different things. And also, because water is the substrate of everything, there is a whole lot of really surprising stuff going on all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And our job is not to be like, we are going to help all of them. We'll provide a ton of help to the wastewater treatment plants of the world and to the drinking water treatment plants of the world and to the utility operators of the world. We already do that. But our job is to stay patient for the businesses that we think make sense. And I think, and that lends itself to, like, the psychological position has to be, you as company, a priori, does this make sense according to what I understand about the market, even if this looks weird? So, I mean, hope is a really good example here. I mean, I think when people look at this, it's like, well, that's simple. And also, do we want more physical advertising in the world?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, maybe, but is it a small price to pay for free, reliable water access in a way that currently public water access is unidirectional in terms of cost? You pay for the unit, you pay for the water to go through it, you pay for the filters, you pay for all of the maintenance. It's just a headache. And when something is a pure cost driver,
Yeah.
not going to be out there in the market in the way in which it should be, because it's great that they have 2 units in Times Square and now outside major West Coast airport, Minneapolis and Pool, etc. There's a whole bunch of really good stuff going on, but it gets really interesting and really impactful when you think about outside the New Africa Hotel in Dar es Salaam and outside the central train station in Delhi, right? The logic of free, reliable public water provision as paid for by anyone from Rivian to Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
right? The really, really interesting part of it. But in order to understand the business, you really have to be very clear about what the business is about. And it's much more about the science of advertising than it is about necessarily water. So we obviously understand the free provision of water access and kind of LK's business and all this, you know, the incumbency around this. And we definitely understand the plastic bottled water market. But you need to hitch yourself to a founder who really, really, really understands. And I know, Megan, this is your wheelhouse. The marketing world, right? The advertising world. And what Jorge has in Spain. There is an alchemical relationship between him and the logic and, frankly, the personalities of the advertising world. And so this was one when I kind of went back for this. That maybe there were a couple of views askance at, like, it seems odd. But in a portfolio construction, it's really important to have things like hope and possibly even conserve, right? Which is doing which is a countertop unit that means that we're not defrosting things by pouring potable water over it for, I mean, literally 14 hours a day, which is astonishing waste of time and water. But most people wouldn't sit there at a desk and say, that is my thesis. I will then go and find that company.
Right.
You wouldn't hold to write these people from a desk in a million years, but that's actually really powerful. A lot of other people are underwriting, I mean, now ultra pure water, of course, right? Or they're underwriting kind of like leak detection or the upgrades to drinking water plants or like whatever it is. These things that are relatively easy to underwrite from a desk. But I get really excited when stuff walks through the door and I'm like, wait, sorry, you're doing what? It's really a thing. And then you dig deeper and you find out, oh, it actually is really a thing, which in a market this size is eminently possible. So that's why we have this kind of level of esoteria within the portfolio. It's good for our LPs, multiple different business models, multiple different geographies, multiple different drivers from across the economy, from permanent carbon sequestration to supply chain resilience, and then obviously the stuff that is a little bit more more traditional in water and wastewater treatment, et cetera, et cetera. But we love having this freedom. And certainly it plays in, I think, to our strengths, which is that we're not just about water. We are just about water businesses, but we're well versed enough in businesses overall that we can take swings at things that I think maybe others would have problems with.
Without a doubt. And I think that's why you, more than any person and probably fund, I think have the most, you seek out the diversity of the market, because you can understand if I have a good product and you can kind of connect those dots of where it's going, you can help that founder put that focus and force that good product into existence, because you have the knowledge of the market, right? And you can apply and you can combine all of that.
We can definitely be helpful, but often I'm really often quite struck by the degree to which we're not just building water businesses. We're just building businesses.
Yes. Yes.
We're just building businesses. There's nothing actually intrinsically esoteric. There are things that you need to manage that are maybe slightly spiky within water than it would be otherwise. But I don't know anything about, building semiconductor fabs or actually building fintech companies. We are actually about to invest in a fintech company, so we do know something about it. But every market is difficult. Every market is difficult in its own and special esoteric ways. And I think that we fall into the trap in water of thinking that we are particularly hard, that we are that we are crap and slow, and we are, lots of sections of it are crap and slow. I would argue crap and slow often for good reason, but often also not for good reason. And that it's incumbent upon the founder to find the wedge to be able to get people to stop being slow. Actually, slow weirdly can manifest itself as a really, really, really interesting mode. But yeah, I think we kind of revel in that water is particularly XYZ, and I actually don't think water is particularly XYZ. And what we're just looking for is the founders who are equipped to manage that, and usually that manifests in founder market fit. But honestly, and Megan, you were ground zero for this observation, which is you can have founder market fit, but you and actually a couple of your predecessors as winners of Imagine H2O's overall challenge, people then really do the work to understand what reality looks like within the market. You can have worked your way into an understanding of reality in the market, or you can do the work from the outside to understand the reality of the market. Megan, you were the archetype of the latter. We're usually looking for the former because it's kind of sometimes a little bit of a cheat code. But either of those two, it's that was an idea that really started with you, Megan.
Yeah, but I think you hit the nail on the head. In water, you have to be a founder willing to build a business, not just a founder willing to will your technology or your idea and exist. That's part of it. But Isaac, you and I were just talking about, you have to be willing to do what it takes to actually build a viable business. And sometimes that can be in conflict with your original thoughts as a founder.
Yeah.
But I think we need more of that, meaning more of, funds like Tom saying, let me help you build a viable business and all that it takes. You bring the good idea, but, we're going to help you, build the viable business.
And it's difficult, I think for a lot of founders, and I think this is where water maybe is differentiated because it carries so much weight. We can get oversubscribe the fact that our mission matters more than the fundamentals of the business. And so you can hold on to your thesis before letting folks challenge it and say, oh, maybe the problem is this, but the pain is over here, and I'm actually solving this pain. That's the business.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I think often kind of a founders, what you hear at conference after conference after conference is always, sort of, you don't understand us, right? It's why don't investors invest more? All right, I get it, but we've invested now in 33 companies. 32 are still in business. We've put about 56 million odd to work, something like that. We've looked at, I think it's something on the region of about 2,500 companies to invest in 33. There are a couple of things that I think are underestimated. Firstly, it's not you against your competitor. When you go to an investor, it's not you against your competitors. It's you against everyone else.
Yeah.
It's every other potential destination of capital, right?
Yes.
Wallet share.
The bar is really high.
Hi. Yep.
It's really, really, really high. And then the second thing is in the context of that bar, it's not, oh, we can kind of sometimes we can get around things that aren't there yet because we've seen the kind of the precursors of things that we think are really encouraging that we think will manifest later in the company's life. This is especially true when it's an early stage company, but kind of everything has to line up. It's not enough to be like, we are going to go do this. But because if you're going to go and do this at 15% gross margin, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard. And and then when somebody, which we have to expect over the life of our deployment period, we have 3 years to put on section of like first check fully together out there into the market. We've got to expect that somebody's going to come through, especially now in the age of AI, that's going to walk through and be like, yeah, we've managed to actually build a really interesting kind of 120 customer set where if you're selling utility software, we've got 120 customers and our sales cycle is now down at about 47 days. And it looks like our gross margins are going to be trending somewhere towards like 92, 93%.
That's an investable company.
Really interesting. Like these businesses, we've grown to like our supply chain business that we've just invested in, the gross margins are eye-watering. They've got a team of 3 and they've got 167 million hectares under observation. This is a company called Epoch Blue.
Yeah.
We've got to expect, because we're not just about the decision set here in this,
right.
in the England now, we're actually betting about what the future is going to look like within the context of that deployment.
Yep.
Naturally optimistic activity. And so when you come to us, it's not enough to be like, it's when people write the 2.1 billion people don't have access to, which is a tragedy and intrinsically unhelpful in the context of the argument that you are making to us. Because firstly, we know, 2, you can't build anything against that.
That's right. So Tom, you teed this up really well to do some rapid fire predictions looking in, as we kind of round for 2026. So I want to pull on that thread. Because we know that as investors, you're going to be looking at AI through the lens of not only building a business on AI, but you said it, operational efficiencies. So what are your predictions related to how unit economics and your expectations as an investor are going to change with AI?
Well, you need to be careful about the unit economics with AI because it's not like SAT, right? In that there is a component of gross margin, which is the compute, which is additional to every query. So there's just a sort of a small point about the underwriting of those companies. In the context of AI, we really like it this all feels so hackneyed. I'm so bored of the creating of OpenAI's like overall web. It's just a big cat's cradle of power, which he's absolutely right to build. But the risk of this being a giant waste of resources is really massive, because we think that the answer to the really obvious problem of generalized AI, so the large models, is small models. The problem with large models is that they're consistently wrong, especially where the public data is crap. And where is the public data crap? Public data's crap in water.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just garbage. We've been through, we've been told we get told lies every day by it. And the solution to that is small language models, especially I use the word proprietary because actually the data usually still belongs to the utility or whatever it is. But nevertheless, having access to the data can only be a result of establishing a commercial relationship with that entity.
Yeah.
And so really interesting moat that's there. And so if you can build a leadership position, if you're looking at obviously yourselves, Soar AI, Dorplas, we're complying. We think Team Solve have got something really interesting going on in this. Is that you have flywheels because you're operating in an area where you can never be wrong. Right. And the data set is not available to anyone else. Like those two things together are really interesting, but they are solved by small language models.
Yeah.
You need a $14 billion data center to run what I think I'm optimistic, but cautiously optimistic. Not everything is going to work. There's a lot of just we slapped AI on something and then no, it doesn't work like that. You've got to be within a defined vertical with a defined value proposition, a whole bunch of structural things. But the reason why we think is escalatingly important is that finally utilities in particular are being instrumented in a way that they haven't been before, that there is finally a data lake for these companies to act on. which really wasn't there before. I mean, I remember writing like when we worked with Pluto AI, writing a piece in 2017 about like why AI was going to be tricky because we don't have data lakes in water, which isn't the data.
Right.
So you can say you're doing AI, but if you don't have the data, you're not doing AI. That is increasingly less true. And as that comes through, there are a couple of things. Firstly, the vertical application happens to that data lake. Scale it can't cope. You know, a whole bunch of siloed garbage like running around, and utility operators are going to get frustrated at best. So there's a whole bunch of things that come with the expansion of the data lake, and then the tools that get built on top of it.
Yeah, yeah. That's fascinating, that take on AI, and encouraging for companies like 120 that maybe the innovators of AI are actually incumbents right in front of us that are sitting on loads and loads of actually good structured data, right?
Yeah, so there's one guarantee is that like Google doesn't build this. You know, there's that shitty
Right.
VC cluster. It's like, what if Google builds this? Yeah, well, Google.
But they don't have the data. To your point, they don't have the
Well, they
data.
may try, but we've heard of a bunch of salutary lessons about people paying rather a lot of money to rather expensive companies to build something that doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, there's real opportunity, but you need to find the people who are equipped to build it. But when you do, it's tremendously exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Gonna do some rapid fire too. 2026. Who are the winners? Who are the winners and losers? And pick either a sector, a theme in water. Who's winning in 2026?
So I think what we've seen now with the acquisition of Urbint after the acquisition of SmartCover, I think this is going to be a really interesting time for data related platforms, whether it's AI or otherwise. So coming through into it, I think that there is going to be, I don't think it's euphoric. I think actually the acquisitions that have already happened, I think are pretty interesting, and we'll see how much the current incumbents, the emerging incumbents kind of fall for it now that Itron have made a move, Badger have made a move. So we'll see where it is. I don't know if it's a winner, but they're going to be a participant. I mean, I was really struck by the presence of private equity at WEFTEC. They're getting thirsty. And I think it's going to be an interesting, certainly deal-making time. And some really interesting platforms are being built. A third winner, I think, is actually going to be the incumbents. Everybody keeps on saying that, like, you know, Xylem are obviously our largest investor and we love them. This is a good time to be in the public markets. There are challenges by having, you know, high stock prices, but water is just going to be unidirectionally more obvious within the public narrative. And the biggest players within water are going to get rewarded for their exposure to the market by the publics. And then I think that, if I had to choose anyone else that's going to be a winner, I would keep an eye out for the bond markets. Now, I'm just a huge Kate Lamb fan,
Yeah.
but I think that there's more of an idea that, because like VC takes up a whole bunch of air and it is irrelevant next to the bond market. Everything is essentially irrelevant next to the bond market. And if it can be brought to bear, I think there's a really interesting, like, low cost access to liquidity for the public entities that really need it. And if I had to choose anyone in the entire planet in order to be the real advocate for the emerging blue bonds world, she's spending a bit more time on the oceans, but she's a freshwater person at heart. So I would just be looking out for progress in the blue bonds, especially if we're going into an interest rate reduction environment.
Interesting. You heard it here, guys, on the podcast.
This podcast is not investment advice.
Yeah, no, that's actually, I was going to ask you this is not investment advice. This is just a casual conversation between friends. But yeah, I was going to ask you, Tom, who you would recommend to have on the pod. And I think Kay would be a phenomenal guest. Maybe you can help us with that.
She's great. I mean, you know, I would love you guys to, I think Chris Gasson is.
Oh, yeah.
He's such an interesting dude.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, you guys have got to have a conversation with Mick sooner rather than later.
Oh, yes. I know. It's so fun to see him.
Anytime you get into a conversation with either Reinhard or Dirk at Skyon, especially given the recent section of Evo that just got sold, They're always worth talking to. But like, God, the list is very, very long.
That's what I mean. We have years of amazing guests that we can bring on, and including yourself, Tom. So thank you for making the time to be on the Make Water Work podcast. We really appreciate it.
Such a huge pleasure. Great to see you both. In 2 dimensions after seeing you in 3 dimensions last week.
I know. We can talk about the fact that there's maybe too many conferences in water sometimes, but I love that it allows us to connect in person.
Exactly.
So I was like, just one last thing. I connected to a very, very large growth fund. They were last seen writing just an eye-wateringly big check into Anthropic. But I sort of met up with them next to the AI stage at WefTech, and they both looked slightly shell-shocked. And I was like, "You okay?" I was like, "I'm good. What's going on?" They said, "We knew that water was big, but we didn't know it was this big." And I was like, wow, people are just taking a long time to actually internalize how big this is. It's the substrate of literally everything. And you're surprised that there are 24,000 people like wandering around in a convention center in Chicago. Yeah, we allow everything to function.
Well, I think that's what I appreciate so much is how many voices there are. Yours, I'll include ours in there, where we have to advocate for water, for the thing that it makes up the majority of our body, the fundamental molecule, which is a great podcast. You should
Wonderful
check it out.
podcast. Please check that out.
It is just about telling the story of water, but not just the story of water, the story of the impact that it has on our lives. And I think you're telling that story in the way that you're making investments. If you just watch the investments of Burnt Island, it tells an interesting story, and it's going to be really fun to look back on the story that was told.
They're a good bunch. As I said at the beginning, we are in awe every day. We are so lucky to be working with this set of founders, the Burnt Islanders. And yeah, I mean, it really, my job is it's difficult, but it's pinch myself, just working on behalf of these founders is insane. It really is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for all that you do, Tom, and we're looking forward to have some of the Islanders focused on the podcast as well. So definitely want to give a platform to all of the good work they're doing.
There's some great stories in there. But really, congratulations to you on what you've all built at one and continue to build at 120, and what you're building here. It's so great to have such really excellent, erudite, intelligent storytellers who are also putting their shoulder to the wheel of getting this message out there. So congrats to you both.
Well, Isaac, Tom never disappoints. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
If you could bottle up his energy I can feed off of it for days.
Yeah. And, I always walk away with a new way to think about something. And I wanted to just kind of double click on, he's doing mission work at Burnt Island Ventures that's so necessary to the water sector. And I love his take on, the advocacy around fundraising is advocating for water. And I mean, of the, tens of millions of dollars that I've raised without McCurr, I've never thought of it that way, but it's so accurate. Like the bar is so high in terms of water and the amazing technology and the amazing founders. And, every dollar into this sector is advocating for technologies that need to exist.
Yeah.
And I love how that's just so core to what Burnt is doing.
Yeah. And I feel like what really comes through is his ability, just like the admiration that he has for the entrepreneurs that he invests in as well, is just flipping the script on what it means to take risk. You're not taking risk on what's proven, you're taking risk on where is this going. Exactly. And so his ability to say, it's not just that he sees it, it's that he invites the collaboration with the people around him to validate what that vision is. And then there's a lot of alignment. So I think Burnt Island is a fund to watch. If you're in it, if you're a founder, they are a fund you want to seek out, and if you have the privilege of getting to work with that team, you will be in incredible company. And so, yeah,
check them out.
Check them out. And thank you so much for joining us on the Make Water Work podcast. We couldn't be more excited to get to have these conversations. Feel free to like, share, follow, and don't forget to reach out and let us know if there's someone in particular that you want to hear from and how they make water work. Thanks for listening to the Make Water Work podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. Connect with us on LinkedIn or send us a message. Together, we can make water work for everyone.